Welcome to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host, here to guide you down the rabbit hole into the world of psychoactive plants, frogs, and fungi. Good morning and welcome back to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host, here with a special guest named Ryan Graves. And we have had Ryan's wife, Stephanie, on before to talk about her experience with Iboga and how psychedelics have helped her in the last 3 years. Today, we're going to learn from the man who inspired it all. He's here to talk about his book, Miraculous, as well as some new ones coming, like the Mushroom Chronicles, which we're really excited about. He's going to talk to us about his experience with Iboga, Ayahuasca, also how he has worked through addictions, grief, and trauma working with these wonderful psychedelic medicines. So I'm going to just get this show started so we can dive right in.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
The button, there we go. Hello and welcome back, you beautiful souls. This is the Integration Station, and I'm your host, Naturally Ashley, here with a wonderful guest, Ryan, today. Now, Ryan is someone who has been working with psychedelics for a while now, about 3 or so years. And in this time has been also writing and publishing books around his experience. And so I was really inspired just to have him on, dig a little bit deeper, figure out, or at least even if it's not figuring out, but, just diving in and seeing like what brought him here, what was the inspiration, and see how it is that he's helping people now and how it is that he's sharing. So I guess I'll just pass it over to you, Ryan. You can
all right. Well, first of all, Ashley, thank you for having me. It's a real honor and a privilege to be here and speaking about this stuff. Or not that it's stuff, but it's important. And in short, I actually started 4 years ago, and I was at a rock bottom. I'd lost my little brother, Connor, to drug addiction. I was a maddening alcoholic that could never find separation from it. So I didn't feel like there was anything left to do but try drinking ayahuasca. And my experience was so profound that it caused a shift in me that I never knew was possible. And, in tune with my writing, it just all I wanted to do coming out of the experience was write about it. But I was really afraid because, at that point, there wasn't really a lot happening in our world revolved around this. So I kind of just stashed some ideas for later and kept doing more healing work with psychedelics. And every time I went on one of my adventures, it was just more profoundness and more, hey, I got to share my story. People need to learn what this is doing to me. And, I did plant medicine for about a year on 4 different occasions. I did ayahuasca, then I did Iboga. And Iboga was the one that separated me from alcohol forever. I haven't drank since I took Iboga the first time, and I know that I'm never going to. So that's why I felt so inspired to share, because even coming back from Costa Rica from that experience, I knew that I was done. And that was just a freedom that I hadn't experienced in my entire life. So that was wonderful. And then I went on to do 2 more journeys in 2019. And by the end of that year, I just felt the story came to me, my story, and it was literally written in my head in one afternoon. And all I had to do was sit down and write it. And I did. It's called Miraculous. It's actually right here. I can show you. And it was the most rewarding project of my life, and I've learned a lot about the experience as of late, and we can get into that later. But, it's proved to be helpful to 3 or 4 people specifically that I know of, that have read my book and been inspired to try plant medicine, and they're on their journey now of healing and sobriety, whatever that looks like for them, so it's been rewarding, and I haven't stopped at all. I have a second book the manuscript is complete. I just haven't got around to finishing it. And I'm also right now currently working on something I've called the Mushroom Chronicles, which we can get into later as well. But, I just talking a little bit more about myself, I mentioned that I'd lost a little brother, but I also lost another little brother this past year in March of 22. So this year has been a really tough year for me. And, it's Christmas time now. So, a lot of these old feelings and stuff are coming up. And that's why I feel continuously so inspired to continue this journey, is because, my brothers didn't die of addiction. They died of pain. They died of trauma. They died of these things that are really, creating really lifelong impacts on our people in this world, you know what I mean? And I think that simple trauma gets overlooked often, and that's why, again, I feel so inspired to write about my trauma, because I'm finding that I have a lot in this life, and I have a lot that was generational, that's really out of my control. And I feel like I am the savior and the hero in my family that's really being the cycle breaker. And I will be the first to admit that it's really hard work, but at the same time, it's absolutely rewarding and necessary. So that's my little spiel for now, and I'll let you go from there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ryan. You touched on so many important things, but what I love the most, like, we'll dive into your story some more here, but is that you are starting with your inner circle, with that family. We had your wife on earlier who was working with medicines too. I think that's really, really powerful when your loved ones are seeing the change in you, and that in itself inspires. And you took those steps to start with yourself, then your inner circle, and then you were ready to share through stories and make a bigger impact. But you really started at home and with yourself, and I really want to just bring some grace to that and make it stand out a little bit more too. I know that the alcohol and the addiction, that's a subject that I'm sure we could spend 3 hours, 3 days, 3 years talking about. It's a big one, but I think it was also very impactful that you said it wasn't the addiction that caused any of the grief or the death. It was the roots of that addiction. Why are people getting addicted? It is this pain, this trauma, and some of it isn't even ours. Even though it becomes our work to do, it didn't start with us. It didn't start with you or me or your brothers. But it is a big step to take responsibility and to take your power back and to do this work.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious how you found ayahuasca as, a last resort. You said it was the last resort, but there must have been many things that you tried before. What led you to that path?
Well, it's an interesting story. I'd been sober for 2 years. So I went to rehab after my little brother died in 2016, and I thought rehab and spending all that money was going to be the thing that kept me sober, and it did for 2 years. But I was miserable. I lived my life in fear, shame. I had so much anger, and I just didn't know what was wrong with me. So finally, I went back to alcohol, and during that experience, I actually relapsed when I was around my family, which was a blessing in disguise because my older brother had done ayahuasca before. And I write about this in my book. Well, everyone in my family, literally 20, 30 people, were outside partying, having a pool party. I was dead drunk in our basement, and I made an appearance because I really was looking forward to that moment all summer, because I loved being around my family and friends and all this. And when I got up there, I could not do anything. I was witnessing everybody having the time of their lives, and I was just this drunk guy that couldn't connect with anyone, that hated himself so much. And my older brother saw this. He observed me walk outside onto the deck and then turn around and go back inside. And that moment, he had the call, not me. He felt the call. It's like, oh my God, I know what I need to do for my little brother. So he talked to my mom and said, like, literally that minute, it's like, I know what we need to do with Ryan. We need to find him some ayahuasca. So at that point, I had no idea what this stuff was. I had gone on mushroom journeys in high school. It's more of, fun. And I was always drinking, so it was never anything meaningful. That's how I thought, but I've come to learn that some of those were, Anyway, so my brother got me set up and found a tribe that was based out of Canada. I just said, sure. When do I go? How much does it cost? What do I got to buy plane tickets for? And I had to stay sober for about a month before I left, and I was. And that was the easiest time it was for me to stay sober because I had this to look forward to. I really believed in it before I even went. It was really miraculous, and once I went there, it just literally everything changed. And I'll admit that the experience itself was terrifying. It was the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. But as the sun came up the next morning, I was a new person, like that simple. It was like, and what I've described it as, it's like my head was in a toilet bowl full of piss, shit, vomit, all that stuff. And I drank ayahuasca and it was like, shoom, fresh air, and that was what happened to me. And that's how I got there. So that's why I'm such a big believer, because I experienced it myself.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool too that, this is now becoming, really a thing that your family is attached to. They're seeing these results from it. I love that it was your brother that introduced you, and then your wife. It's like this ripple effect is coming to life in your family. You're a great representation of that.
Thank you.
So from your ayahuasca experience to the Iboga experience, what happened in that time?
Well, you were talking about my family, and I would be the first to admit that, it's not as much bells and whistles as you think, because I'm the only one that's really changing. And, my brother had experience, but he's on his path and I'm on mine. And just losing another brother, we were really all trying to do the best we can. And it was just a lot of shit, you know what I mean? And so that part of it has been tough. And that's what ayahuasca did to me, is it made me learn that my conditioning in my childhood wasn't this fairy tale that I thought it was. And for the first time in my life, I started feeling things that I wasn't used to. I started understanding things. I started to really realize or understand that my parents just had a way of really making me feel sad. They kind of projected their sadness and their shame on me. So anytime I spoke to them, I was feeling those same emotions. And that led me to drink again, even after I did ayahuasca, because I was really confused and I was really sad. And when I drank that, I was like, the first thing I did that time was like, I got to go back to rehab, And then I got thinking a little bit more. And I actually found an article on the web written by a woman named Amber Antonelli, and she is one of the facilitators at Awaken Your Soul in Costa Rica, which serves Iboga. And it was breaking down the differences between ayahuasca and Iboga. So when I read that, I'm not kidding you, it was just like, oh my God, that's the medicine I have to do, because it spoke to me. They called it the grandfather. They said it just looked like it was going to give me the answers that I was seeking, easily. And I'll admit I was terrified, but there was no mistaking the call. There was no mistaking that's exactly what I had to do. And it was like for 2 weeks after I signed up for it, it was like an ego versus Ryan fight. Like, who's going to win? Is Ryan going to get to Costa Rica? Is the ego, the fear going to keep him from doing it? And it was a real battle. And I got down there. And again, when I started doing plant medicine, I was terrified. And I really, really got to the bottom of my trauma and my alcoholism, that just in one experience. There was supposed to be two, and I only did one. And it was just the most profound experience of my life. And I think I cried for like 5 days in a row, nonstop. And like I said, it just completely removed that burden of alcohol, because I understood why I was drinking, at least in this lifetime, and the trauma that more or less programmed me to be that sort of drinker. And it was, it brought me all the way back to when I was an infant, and again, I was the one who experienced it. So I knew it was true. And like the tears that came with it were so profound that it was hard to ignore. And it was incredible. And I have mad respect for that particular medicine, Iboga. But it's not to be taken lightly. That's for sure, because that was 3.5 years ago, and I'm still integrating, and I've done it a couple times since, and now I realize that isn't something you do once a year. That is something you really take your time with and respect, because it is a very deep medicine with lots of wisdom. So that's my spiel on that.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that you were called to, and a strong calling at that, to these two master teachers. One of them may have been directly for you, and one of them may have been, an introduction or initiation. But yeah, they are really powerful. And Iboga, not only for alcoholism, but is really helping people with long-term opiate addiction and suicidal ideation, many things that are going on in our culture today that really can be helped by just sitting with the plant teacher. These ancient medicines that have this wisdom, they help us remember and unlock and go through a sense of rebirth. And
beautiful.
It's so important. The way that you're sharing this, I think, is just really beautiful. And
Thank you.
So what did you learn, in your time of being an alcoholic and now this time of sobriety? What were some of those big lessons for anybody who might be going through this now?
That I was just covering up so much pain that I was completely unaware of. I was drinking a liter of vodka a day, and I really didn't even know why I was drinking a liter of vodka a day. And the thing is, as I've gotten older, and I was deep in therapy before, I quit drinking. I was just under the assumption that my childhood was a fairy tale because that's how it was labeled to everybody. And, what I found in this work more than anything is that most of these traumas are results of childhood trauma. And that was true for me. That's been true for all my brothers. And that's been the hardest part in this. It's just really understanding this stuff and the truth about why, I'm doing this. And we can get this more when I start talking about the Mushroom Chronicles, because that has everything to do with what we're talking about now. But just the immense pain. And, lately for me, it's just been about accepting this stuff. And I was just in denial for a very long time about a lot of things, like, just pretending that everything was good, that my relationship with my family were stellar, and that my relationship with myself was great. And here I am, drinking enough to pass out on a daily basis. So it's hard to even think about that because I was so unaware. And plant medicine has done more than anything. Like you said, they're teachers. They have made me aware. And when you are aware of your feelings, then you can start understanding your feelings. You can start getting clarity on your feelings, and you can start really understanding why you were doing the drinking. So in my experience, the biggest lesson I've had in all of this is the forgiveness. The forgiveness for that drinking in those years ago, for being an asshole, for driving drunk, for stealing, and all these things. Like when I got to a certain point, it was just easy to be like, no wonder I was doing that. You know what I mean? And then you can cry with yourself, have that love for yourself, and you can let it go. And that was the most important thing with alcohol. Is like once I got to that forgiveness, that self-forgiveness, and understood it, truly understood why I was drinking, it was really easy for me to let it go. And it is really miraculous. And again, that's why I titled my book that, because it's Christmas time. I've lost 2 brothers, and like that is not something that's even on my mind. It's just like something that if I get to choose my own world, like it'd be a world without alcohol. I don't want it anymore. Like back, the first few years of being sober, I was like, it's no fair. I wish I could drink like everybody else. Now I don't give a shit. It's just like, I'll just have some of this or that, or have a nice cup of tea, and that's what fills my heart. And if I need to escape of sorts, I think cannabis for a lot of drug addicts and, hardcore alcoholics like me is a great, great choice. And I think that gets overlooked. People, you replaced one substance with another. I took that a lot, and I've actually felt guilty and shamed myself for it. And in reality, it saved my life. It really has, and really given me a different perspective. And just like all these other plant teachers, I think cannabis is a phenomenal teacher, and it's taught me so much. More than anything, how to be a patient and loving and gentle father, and I owe a lot of that to cannabis. So it's nice to be able to use a substance, if you want to call it a substance, guilt-free, because that was not my experience with alcohol.
Yeah. And thank you so much for bringing that up too, because I felt that, and I had people say that to me too. And it brings like this shame, and makes you start like doubting, did I really make it that far? Did I really accomplish anything? Like, is any of this real? And it's like, yeah, the truth is I'm still a better person. I still did quit drinking, and I've kept it up. Why am I taking, this person's feedback? You really have to consider who the feedback's coming from and why they're giving that feedback.
Amen. Amen.
A lot of things have to change. And when you're coming out of a dark night of the soul or coming out of an addiction, you're in a very vulnerable state, but you also need to be aware that the people around you, they have a hard time with change. So, we have a hard time changing ourselves, but when people are watching, they're like, they want us to stay the same because they don't want their life to change and
Absolutely.
it feels threatening. So it's really important to have that consideration there. And, you know, kudos to you for finding that and knowing that, you know, is a tool to help. I think it's a phenomenal tool. It can really help you learn focus. You know, if you set an intention before smoking cannabis, you're going to like write for 4 hours, you know, if that's what it is. I'm going to sit down with tea and I'm going to write. Like, you're in the zone. But if you use it unintentionally and there is no purpose, it can still, you know, maybe not the same like horror stories from alcohol, but it can still be a little bit destructive, you know, get you in the habit of drifting, which can alter the mindset or like get in other habits. But with intention is a phenomenal tool, and it helped my mom get off of opiates and many different pharmaceuticals. She was on for a decade, and now she's been sober off of all of it for a decade now. So it's a great tool, and I'm grateful you brought that up.
Thank you.
So, where do we go from here?
Anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere we want. Okay. So when did mushrooms come back in your life? When did you make the decision that you were going to start working with them again?
This is where I was going to go. So I've had, since I've started, you know, journeying, I've had mushrooms back in my life. I've experienced them on many different levels. But so in October of this year, I was diagnosed with PTSD. And after my brother died, I went through a lot. And all these symptoms I was experiencing were really relatable to autism and ADHD. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. So I finally signed up to go to get a brain scan at the Amen Clinic. And this was in September. And the results showed me exactly what I needed to know, because I stopped worrying about the ADHD and the autism, and I just started focusing on my trauma. And I like I said, like my biggest problem in all this has been acceptance, and accepting that the trauma that I've had has been very, very impactful on my life. So after I was diagnosed with that, my doctors recommended EMDR, which I have lined up in January, February, and March, and I'm excited about it. I think it's going to help. But I also gave myself permission to try something on my own. So that's when I started microdosing mushrooms. I do just a little bit of psilocybin with lion's mane, and I take it 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday. And I'm going to do it in 3 cycles. So I did phase 1, which was in October and in November. And I just finished up phase 2 last Friday. I'm going to do phase 3 the week after Christmas. And I have understood things about my trauma that I never knew existed. I've kept a running diary. This is my laptop, a running diary of my experience since the very first day, and I write every single day. And what turned into like a project for me, I'm pretty sure it's turned into a project for the whole world, you know, because I don't hold a thing back. It's raw. It goes into everything, and I think it's really important because I think a lot of the stuff I talk about as a 39-year-old married man with children are probably a lot of the same experiences other men are having in this world, that are too afraid to speak up, too afraid to admit them, too afraid to talk about them, you know? And that's why I feel called to do it, is because, you know, I want to just be that guy that says, hey, it's okay to talk about this stuff, you know, like that's what we're here to do. And I found that talking about it, writing about it, being vocal about it is what's changing me, what's changing my family. So I just kind of, again, felt the call, you know, I just roll with the calls, I guess.
You know, it's really important to do, though, you know, if you're pushed in a direction to do it. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom behind your process. Yogi Bhajan, he said something that really stuck with me and helped me like kind of structure my own journey, maybe not like in a rigid way, but it definitely brought the awareness. And that's, if you want to learn something, you read about it. If you want to understand something, you write about it. And if you want to master something, you teach it. And that's kind of the same process that you're just naturally going on, is that you're experiencing it for yourself, you're writing about it to understand it, and then you're sharing it.
Wow, that was thank you for that. I like that a lot. That's good. And I guess it's a perspective on what I'm doing. Yes, you know. Yeah. And I've been told that I'm a good teacher, but I'm not really good at vocalizing. I'm better at writing it down, you know. And it's funny you say that, because a lot of times when I need answers, I just write, and like I don't the stuff isn't coming from my brain. I don't know where it's coming from. You know what I mean? And that's why I believe in what I'm doing. That's what I learned by writing my first book, is that like this is what I'm here to do, because like I was remembering things that I had no business remembering. I was telling the story, like, why am I writing this? And then like 4 chapters later, it's like, that's why I wrote about this. So it's just, I feel like there's something much bigger going on in my mind, you know, and it's, I feel the call, and I can't, you know, abandonment's our big thing, you know, in my family, and like, because there's been so much death, and I can't turn my back. I'm not going to abandon this ever, you know, because that would be abandoning myself. And I can't do that because I've done that for most of my life.
Yeah, and you're coming at it from a place of purpose too, you know. It's the purpose to understand it for yourself. It's the purpose to break patterns and keep them broken for your family, which that's a very strong purpose. But not only that, like, you have to understand it in order to make it a permanent thing. And then you're able to give this gift, you know, outward to the rest of the world too, the other men out there that are going to be able to relate to this book and to your stories and to any other writings that you put out there in the future too.
Thank you.
There's when you were discussing working on trauma, that there was these things like ADHD and that coming up. It reminded me of getting diagnoses myself as a child, and one of them was OCD, and it wasn't until like recent years when I realized that it's actually anxiety and not its own separate thing. You know, if you deal with the anxiety, which, you know, again, takes a self-discovery, but the OCD is just a side effect of that. And these are the kinds of things that we're not taught. When the very first time I heard of PTSD, I thought that meant childhood trauma, but it actually means complex trauma, meaning trauma's happening over and over and over again, instead of PTSD, which would be just one trauma, like going to the war. It's this big thing in your life, you know. It's not just a one day, one time, but it's a one event. Where CPTSD is a little bit different. Than, I don't know how much you want to talk on this or traumas, but I'd love to hear just, you know, what your thoughts are around trauma, around CPTSD.
Well, it's good because for me, it's both, you know, like I definitely I have a lot of trauma from my childhood, and I've also had a few events that have been painfully traumatic. And I don't mind talking about this because this is in the Mushroom Chronicles, and it was the biggest aha moment for me in phase 1. And so when I was 15 years old, my 6-year-old cousin died of brain cancer. And he was not just an ordinary cousin. He was very close. And as he was going through his cancer and he was getting his radiation and chemotherapy, we were really close, and we all were there for him, and we just bonded as a family. And I was a 15-year-old kid that never assumed that he was going to die. Flash forward to Thanksgiving time, and his life took a turn for the worst. And so on Thanksgiving Day, my freshman year in high school, we were rushed down to Portland, Maine, where he was in the hospital, and that was the day that we decided to take him off life support. So to make a long story short, a couple weeks later, he passed away. And my older brother and I were called because my aunt and uncle lived up the street. And we're called to get up there because Logan's in trouble, and my cousin was in trouble. I don't want to use his name, but anyway, we were. That had happened like 3 or 4 times. My brother got in the car, we drove up there, and like everything was fine. We just had to like sit around in a circle and pray. So we were laughing, thinking everything was gonna be fine. And when we got up there, my mother met us at the door and said that he's gone. And my brother reacted a certain way, and that reaction, which I learned through writing about this experience, his reaction brought on my PTSD, because a moment later, because he really wanted to go see our cousin, even though he had passed away. So since he wanted to go see him, I was grabbed and brought up into that same room. And I was 15 years old, and I was watching my family pass around a dead boy, you know, and I didn't understand the impact this has had on my life until I accepted that I have PTSD, until I accepted that I was not supposed to be in that room, till I accepted that, hey, my parents and like my aunts and uncles didn't know what the fuck was going on. Like, what can you expect? You can't really expect them to have a clear head in that situation. But it ruined me. It ruined me. I became a different person overnight. I was a straight A student. I was golden boy by my family. That's how I was referred to. And then after that, I was I started dicking off in school, getting in-house suspension, I didn't fail any classes, but I was getting C's and D's instead of straight A's, and I just never admitted that to myself. So when I got writing about it, it just really put things in a lot of perspective. And being honest here, I was able to understand a lot of resentment that I carried that wasn't really mine. So I resented all these people who were in that room for many years. And I was a dialogue in my head. I was so mad at them. And it was just toxic stuff. But understanding and writing about this, I understood that I resented them because I shouldn't have been in that room, and then having that acceptance and accepting that they really couldn't be there for themselves, let alone me, it gave me the freedom to let those resentments go. And to be honest with you, it's only been a month, and since this has all happened, and there's no resentment. I've let it go. And so the mushrooms really, I just want to cry. Like, they really gave me a place to really understanding this deep stuff about me that I was too afraid to look at on my own. I was too afraid to admit to myself. And it wasn't easy, to be honest with you. It was hard work, but at the same time, it was rewarded. It was worth it because, like I said, those resentments are flooding my brain, my dialogue, my awareness. And to be able to let that stuff go, you can see like the onion peeling that we always refer to in this world. Like, it's just like one layer after another, and you can breathe a little bit better. You're more aware, and it's incredible. It's incredible. So that was my experience during phase 1. And, letting all that stuff go really got me more in tune with me. Like, I ended that phase by just how happy I was and the direction I was going with my life. And, it was beautiful. It was good. It doesn't sound beautiful probably, but it was. And I'm so grateful that I had the courage to go look at all that stuff.
Thank you so much. I think on this, we might just cut to break and allow our sponsors to share the work that they're doing. I know I personally just want to sit with all that you've shared so far, and then we'll come back on and we'll dig in some more on these subjects, okay?
All right. Yep. Sounds good.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll see you in a minute.
Yep. Thank you.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Growing your own cannabis is easier than you think. Whether you're growing for recreational or medical purposes, BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. From the standard 4-plant recreational systems to the latest cutting-edge hydroponic equipment, BMA can customize your package and do it at discount prices. Visit BMA Hydroponics at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville and ask us for a free estimate. Or call 613-967-9888 and we will give you an estimate over the phone.
The only way to go.
In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to savethevcbc@gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, Ryan. I know we've been talking on some dark stuff here, the traumas, and I'd love to continue because I was just saying, when we're talking about these dark things and being really vulnerable like this, it makes it more relatable and it gives hope that, if one person's been through it that you can relate to, now that's inspiring even more people to take responsibility, take their power back, do something about the situation that they're in, pull themselves out of the dark night of the soul. There is a sense of surrender and a sense of acceptance that comes from working with the medicines, but it starts with making decisions to do something about your life, about what it is that you don't like, start bridging that gap between where you are now that sucks and where you really want to be. Even if that picture isn't as bright or as clear as it could be, you can still start building the bridge to get there. And I think that's, for a lot of people, that first step. So, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to add on that or continue your story, but
I'll let you ask me a question. Usually when I get asked, I can go with that. I don't know where to start right now, so I can go anywhere though.
So yeah, we were talking a bit on traumas, and you mentioned that this experience with your cousin and with your family being in a situation that maybe you weren't meant to be in, and nobody was aware in that moment. And I think this kind of happens a lot, maybe not in the same situation, but where parents and other family members are just getting so involved in whatever's happening, and the child's just kind of dragged along, like unconsciously, and maybe put in some situations. What were some other experiences that you had that may be relatable to other people here? Some things that you've made it through, or that the medicines have helped you understand?
I can say with love and respect to both my parents and my ancestors on both sides that my family basically had it backwards, with how to, I guess the one thing I've learned is that about me and my brothers is that we haven't really shown our parents or our aunts and uncles much respect. And we've been shamed for that our whole lives, and and belittled for it. But what I found out through this work is that the respect has to begin with the parents, with the children. And when you don't respect your children and treat them as people and not just kids or pets, then you're never going to get anywhere. And that's been something that I've been taught more than anything. And I guess this is a great place to go. It's just children. I have 3 kids. They're 8, and 4. Or the one just turned 5. And had I not done plant medicine, I would not be the father I am today. Because more than anything I've learned is just how to be there for your children's needs, to look at them on eye level, to respect them, like I said, and to give them that love and attention they deserve. And I'll be the first to tell you, it's the hardest fucking job in the world. It really is, especially when you have a lot of trauma like I do, because when they fall down and get hurt and they start crying, my first reaction is like, what are you doing, you shithead? Get up, and I have to take a breath and really just be there for them. Because again, when I was falling down, that was my experience when I was a kid. It was get up, pussy, da-da-da-da-da. And it was never just that love that I have. So it's really, really hard work. And that's why I think there's a lot of people out here that aren't talking about how hard it is to be a parent. And a lot of these people are going to bed at night drinking themselves to sleep because it's really, really hard and they don't know what's happening. And my experience and both my brothers' experience are the same thing. We were really bad with drugs and alcohol. The second our kids were born, it skyrocketed overnight, literally. And what I've learned from this experience is that my kids had something to teach me, and I knew I couldn't go through my life being the way I was. And thankfully for them, they haven't seen me at my worst. My youngest son will never see me, drinking, which is a miracle. And, the girls were 3 or 4 when I stopped forever. So it's it's a miracle. And, that's what I've learned more than anything, if that makes sense. And that it's just a really hard job. And I think that there are a lot of parents out there that are having the same sort of struggles without even really knowing why they're struggling. And I'm sure it's attached to their childhood in some shape or form, but if you really have no awareness to it, it's really hard to start, and that was my problem with therapy. I was, talking to a guy for 3 years, and he kept telling me that your childhood wasn't a fairy tale. I would look at him and say, yes, it was. And we were just stuck. We were stuck because I had no clue how bad it really was. And it's no disrespect to my parents. I love them so much. They did a lot better than their parents, which is, congratulations. That's really not easy to do. So it's, and two, and I've gotten to the point where I can have gratitude for my parents because they have taught me the one thing that all these plant medicines teach us, and it's love, right? Yeah. They taught me how to love, and that's really all that matters. So it's just it's a tough cycle. I'm the cycle breaker, so it's hard work, and sometimes that threatens them. So it's been really, really difficult.
Yeah, I totally get that on so many levels. I'm a parent too, and I'm really grateful. I even see it as that it's because of my sobriety that I was gifted a child, because I was told when I was 21 that I couldn't have kids. So it was a complete surprise when I found out I was pregnant, but I was in a good place. I had done some traveling. I was starting my business. I was working with the medicine. I was sober for over a year by the time I was pregnant. So I really did feel like it was a gift that from the work that I was doing, but it's hard work. I'm grateful that I got the message come through that there are people now, that they're not children, so I didn't have to fall in that trap. But I still get it with my parents, and in that grandson scenario too. So there's still work to be done, but I get it, and it is hard, and it's hard when you're doing work for the past and you're doing work for the future and you're doing work for your present self, and it's like
yes, I know.
Yeah. It's nice to know that there's allies here to help. The plants, the frogs, the fungi, we're not alone. They're holding these messages and memories and this intelligence that really is great for just guiding the process. It's like a guide on the side for this crazy wild ride that we're on, and you don't have to be a parent to experience that, but it definitely, from my experience, I feel it's been a gift because of that work that I was doing with the medicine to become a parent. And I really do think and feel that it's helped me. Even though my parents don't see it the same way, they think I'm very free with him. I do things unconventionally, and I do it for a reason. I also believe that we become parents to be our best selves and not to be what society wants us to be, just because parents do things a certain way, because according to the movies or the radio or culture in itself, we are meant to be that kid's parent or those children's parent, because there's something about us that they need for their life, and so, I just, I'm glad that we had the opportunity to just touch on that, being your best self. And if that means working with medicine, or it means doing things a different way, putting down the bottle, it's really powerful work, but it's not easy. It deserves respect. It deserves reverence, just like any one of us humans, just like any one of the plants and the children too.
Right. And it's no different than like going to school or college. These plant medicines, one of my mentors told me this early on, is that each one of these medicines has something to teach you. And just like your college professor, they teach you, but it's up to you to go out there and implement it into your life and integrate it into your life and to study it, to learn it, and to get to know it and all these things. And that's something I enjoy doing. That's why this work is so, it's hard, but it's why it's so easy for me to do and why I'm so passionate about it, because I like, feeling good. I like feeling better. I like teaching. And one thing I haven't mentioned is that I'm, around my writing is that I'm a stay-at-home dad. I stay home and take care of my children while my wife works. And you talk about the best version of you, like that's the best version of me, by far. And it's been an absolute privilege. And getting on this call and talking about it, it's good for me, because a lot of times, especially on Christmas time, like it's really busy. I wish I had more time for me. It's not fair. And I forget about the gratitude that I have for being able to be home with them and to play with them and to have fun, because I had so much fun as a kid with my brothers. And play is such an important word, and what these plants have taught me in the past, it's like, hey bro, play more, play. And this week we've been playing Mario Kart on the Switch and just having so much fun, and I'm grateful. And then again, like it's hard to imagine this life that I'm living without the assist from all of these wonderful plant teachers, and that's why I believe in it so much.
Yeah, and kudos to you for being able to tap into that play. I have that message come through to me a lot, and it's hard to put into practice. I didn't play as a child. I was responsible for so many things because my parents weren't in a good place. I missed out on that. And having a child, that's my chance to kind of like go through that. But it's very, very hard for me. I take a lot very seriously, but I also see a lot of blessings in my son being in my life. Like, he teaches me so much, and helps me break down those barriers, just laugh for the sake of laughing to, goofy things. But it's, again, it's not the easiest thing. It's very uncomfortable for me to do that, to take down those like be serious type of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good.
Absolutely. It is. Yeah. And just quickly on like the PTSD, and anyone who's got any sort of PTSD probably experiences highs and lows the way I, where you're like, oh my God, I'm so great. And it's coming and you're down here. And like usually and that still happens to me. Like this is the work I'm trying to fight through, these highs and lows. And when I'm in my lows, like that's what I've learned. It's like, and that's why it's so difficult to actually go play. But that's what I need to do. It's like, I need that love. I need that attention. I need that fun, that laughter, that joy. And the kids, they're contagious. That love and joy and all that stuff they have is literally contagious. So you just go do that, and it's miraculous how quickly you can change. And so I encourage everybody out there to play as often as you can.
Yeah, they're so resilient too. It's like there's so much to learn, even in how that they handle their emotions. When they're angry, they feel it and free it on the spot, and then they're done. They scrape themselves, they get a boo-boo, they get a magic kiss. They're good to go, But with us adults, it's like, we're going to hang on to that anger for as long as we can and not express it. We're going to, that hurt and that pain, we're going to ignore it until it becomes something crazy bad that might need a hospital.
That's fantastic, because that's the key in all of this, is that I think that children are wonderful teachers, and they've taught me so much. They've taught me how to be a dad. It's just by listening to them and looking at them in the eye and seeing them and all these things. So you're absolutely right. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, there's a lot we can learn. They're great role models.
Mm-hmm.
Society has it backwards, And
that's what I meant earlier with my family. Yes, it's like, it was just my dad's side of the family just had it completely wrong. It was just, they demanded respect, and you can't do this and do that. If I ever talk to my dad this way, it's like, well, Jesus, what are you expecting? You're talking to your kids this way, and it's what goes around comes around. And it's been a painful process for all of us, because like I refused to believe that he was wrong for a long time. And one of my journeys, one of my powerful journeys, is just realizing that I lived in my dad's world. I've been stuck in that world for my whole life, and then just breaking free from that has been really hard. And that's what's hard about this work. It's like when you have that experience. I remember it was one of the most profound experiences on psychedelics, and I was so happy. And I thought everything was healed in that 20 minutes, that hour or whatever it was. And then I came back and I'm like, I'm out of my dad's world. And I was happy as hell. And it's like, no, buddy, the work starts now.
Yeah,
and
that's the integration, right?
Yes. So it's, yes. But then again, I'm smiling. I'm smiling. I can feel just joy all over my body. I mean, those are those experiences that when I get there, it seems like for me in my journeying, it's usually a kind of a battle. Like, I'm fighting, and then the reward, once I really get the clarity and I get what I'm there to seek, then I get to this, this beautiful, this feeling of love and all of it, all these feelings that I can't describe to how impactful that's been for my life, you know, because like that's stuff that I'll never forget ever. And there's been moments I've had in journey space that are more real than anything I've experienced on this planet. And I think it's saying something, you know, because it makes us believe that there's a bigger truth out there, and there's no reason to fear death, which I think most of the people in this culture do. And death should not be viewed as an endpoint. It's just a transition, right? And I think if everyone lived that way, knowing that and believing that, there would be a lot less fear, there'd be a lot more love. And I think people that would really get more in tune with themselves, because they would have that freedom to want to get in tune with themselves, which we're all living the versions of our best selves, then we live in a really great world. You know, we really do. So that's why I'm so passionate about this. I think these medicines can literally save the world.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right on that. I have this strong belief too. And it's nice to see that even that's becoming contagious, you know?
Yes.
The belief, the faith that, you know, we can come back to the garden, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about, you know, being in your dad's world, something that came up for me was a quote by Ram Dass. It's one that my own mentor used on me many a times. Oh, you think you're enlightened, huh? Go spend a week with your family. And it's like, you're like, this is where the work starts now. I'm like, oh yeah, I've totally been there. And I'd love to just pick your brain a little bit for myself and the audience here. You know, how have you been you know, getting yourself out of your parents' cycles, but also, you know, creating your own more mindfully?
You know, I can give you a few examples. You know, my old life, I was a grocery store manager. My dad owned grocery stores, and I planned on taking his store over. And I was supposed to. And then I quit drinking. I woke up. I was like, whoa, I don't want to do this. And I get out of that. And he has refused to kind of let that go. He still brings it up. You know, I would be making really good money if I was at that grocery store. I'm not making shit now. So he likes to remind me about that all the time, and neglect or fail to mention, you know, other things that I'm doing really well. He disapproved of my book. And that's what I learned from this experience. As I said earlier, I would touch on, is that I wrote that book for my family. Miraculous, and there's a lot I took out, there's a lot I cut out, there's a lot I left out because I didn't want to hurt their feelings, and all that did was get me in trouble. And I've learned my lesson by doing this Mushroom Chronicles, is that I do not hold anything back.
Yeah.
And I know this is what's going to get me past the hump. I do, because I believe in myself, and that's kind of the lesson from mushrooms I've experienced. It's like when you write from your heart and you write for you, you can't fail. You can't fail. And so that was really hard. And to be honest with you, Miraculous, I released that last October. And after he read it and disliked it and disapproved of it and never told me way to go or congratulations, I fell apart. And it took me about 9 to 10 months to really come around and to understand it. The only reason I hate my book is because my dad hated my book. I love my book. And it took a long time to really accept that. And then, of course, you know, I'd gotten really to a really good place before my brother Trevor passed away. But that was in March, and that brought up all these old wounds that I was not ready for. And to be honest with you, my wife and I spent a year trying to save him. You know, we brought him to Costa Rica together. He lived at our house for 3 months. So it was a full year of an effort only to see him die. So that was really troubling. So, you know, I've started to live my life for me, you know, and I'll give you another example I learned this fall, and I'm going to talk about my kids in a joyful way, but one of my daughters is a really good bike racer, and she had a race this fall, and she won by a lot, and it was like one of the best days of my life. You could never actually see her race, and she ended up beating all the boys, and it was just really awesome. And I told my dad about it, and my dad wrote to me, it's like, oh my God, she must be proud. And she didn't give a shit. I was proud. And that's what I kind of realized with my dad, is that he only said that to me, and he'd project his pride on me, his sadness on me. And it just taught me a lot about my father, because he'd always say, you must be proud, when I was really good at soccer and I'd score goals. And like, I didn't care. I knew I was great. it made him proud. And that's why I was really fighting so hard, because I knew if I was scoring goals, I wasn't going to get hit, smacked, and yelled at and all these other things, because that made him proud. So it was merely able for me to see how discombobulated, I don't know, that's not a right word, how backwards my father had it. You know what I mean? And it was just that simple in that moment. So, you know, through these experiences, and especially this time, I've grown to have deep compassion for my father and deep forgiveness. And because I know he's suffering, you know, I'm pretty sure he's not going to listen to this, but yeah, I know he's suffering, and I just feel like, I wish there was more I could do, but I've wasted so much time trying to wake them up, trying to see what I'm doing, and all it's done is caused me hurt, more pain, more suffering. And, you know, it's really hard. And that's what I told my wife the other day. It's like, you know, they're really sad right now. My wife had reached out to my mom, and she just said how sad she was because it's the first Christmas without her brother. And, you know, I know, like, the first thing is I want to call them and just be like, hey. But, like, if I'm going to do that, then that means I'm going to be sad. So it's really a fine line on how to do this. And I haven't figured that part out yet. To be honest with you, it's really tricky. You know what I mean? Because I love them dearly. I don't want them to suffer. But at the same time, my happiness is important to me. And my happiness really revolves around everyone in this family. If dad's happy, dad's safe, dad's all this stuff, then everybody's good. Yeah, everybody's good. So it's a tough responsibility for me. And it's really hard to know what to do at the right time, you know. And I've gotten a lot better at setting boundaries, you know, my dad's world. Like in the old days, if he texted me, called me, I had to answer. That was the end of it. And if I didn't, I was going to get shit for it. And I was going to be shamed and all these things, which I admittedly thought was my own fault. You know, I've learned that it's okay to set a boundary. So, for instance, last night, he texted me and said, call me when convenient. And I was able to take a few deep breaths and said, I have this podcast in the morning. I'm not talking to him before that. You know, I'm going to wait until after the podcast. So I said, I'm free tomorrow afternoon. I'll call you then. That is not something I was able to do in my old life. And like just saying this now, I feel like crying because it's progress for me. It's insane progress. And it might not look like progress for people out there, but for me, big time. And I've been able to do that a lot more. I've been able to show up for myself a lot more. And again, when we show up for ourselves, we can start showing up for other people the way that they want to be showed up for. And that's, again, another gift from the psilocybin mushrooms I've been swallowing 4 times a week.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally get it too. You know, with family, I feel that, you know, when we're able to just listen and observe what they're doing without reacting, without taking anything personally, there's a lot of lessons and growth that comes from that. But it is also important to take space for yourself, to make sure that you're putting yourself first, especially as a parent, because this is how we break those cycles. You know, if you're getting sucked back in every single time, you know, that those emotions are then, you know, transmuted into your own child's life, even if it's not in the same way. You know, they're way better with their emotions, but, you know, so, you know, who do you want to choose to learn emotions from? The child or your parent that's been like oppressing that stuff or reflecting that stuff, projecting it? You know, I also think another thing too would be that when we're taking this time away for the healing, that we see in ourselves, like where it is that we have those same emotions or those same things, like where in our life may we be doing the same things. Like when we're talking about the patterns, when I spend time with my parents, that's when I see the most of what I'm doing that may be similar. It may not be in the same way, but when I'm with them, I see those things in myself. And then I know that I need to take time to integrate that and to change my own patterns in a way too. It's like a fractal of itself.
It is.
Another thing we learned from the psychedelics, fractal effect.
Yes, definitely. So
in your mushroom journey, I know that you're microdosing. Have you worked with any of the heroic doses?
I have not allowed myself to do a hero's journey yet. I've probably gone up most to 3.5, you know, not much more than that. I'm being patient with my process because I feel like these medicines have a lot to teach me. I don't want to overwhelm myself. And it's the same thing with LSD. Like, I did one sheet of LSD and I got more answers in 5 minutes than I've got my entire life. So I was like, okay, LSD, let's wait a little bit before I go to these bigger doses, because I don't need all that information right now. You know what I mean? And that's kind of been my experience with mushrooms. It's like, just be patient, and when the time is right, it's time. Because I want to get healed as much as I can. There's no ending to healing, but I want to get to a place where I can go start exploring, to be honest with you. I feel like I have a lot to learn in the spirit world, and I think it's a world that I understand, and that's what I hope to do in my future years, is to write about that sort of stuff. I'm really into that far out stuff, and I understand it well.
Yeah. I find that so interesting too. It's like, that's how you know that there's progress, I think, too, is that you move from the me portion to the we, and now into that spiritual realm. It's like totally working through the chakras. You know, you're starting out in like the root, these elemental chakras, and then you get into the ether, and then you're like way out there into this unknown. And yes, psychedelics really do give us what we need over what we want. Because I have people come to me often saying, oh, I just want to connect with God or connect with spirituality. I want to have this crazy experience. And then they're like, but what I got was a bad trip. I was like, that's because you got some stuff to deal with first. That doesn't mean it's not there. You know, it just means there's some work to do to get there.
Beautiful, but well said. You know, I think that a lot of times in my early journey and career, I was just not being able to surrender to what was right in front of me, and wanting, you know, my first couple of experiences were so remarkable. I wanted those every time, and I was afraid to look at, around the corner and be like, oh, okay, this is why this is coming up. But now, like, with experience, it's really easy to pay attention. So even 3 or 4 days before you go on the medicine thing, things are coming up. It's like, all right, I see where this is going. You know what I mean? And you just become aware. And it's usually, in the nice universal flow always. So if you can have that awareness, you can really prepare yourselves for the journey and afterwards. And then when it comes up during the journey, you're not afraid of it. You can expect it. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of been my experience. And when that pain comes in, those bad trips per se, it's those bad trips that I've had have turned out to be some of the most beautiful, because you really learn something that maybe you weren't ready to learn. And like you said, that was the first thing that people always said to me. It's like, you're not going to get what you want, you're going to get what you need. And if with setting intentions, it doesn't matter. For me personally, every time I set an intention, it might not look like the way I want it to look or whatever, but usually my intention is answered in some shape or form. If it's not immediate, maybe a couple weeks later, maybe a year later. But it always has a conclusion, and they know what they're doing. They really do. Like I said, like my mentor told me, it's like all these medicines have something to teach us. And if you can open your heart to that, there's a lot to learn. You know what I mean? And people, like, what I've seen, the biggest mistake in people that I've witnessed in all these places that have gone to do this work is that the inability to take a look at themselves. And that's no judgment whatsoever, because it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to do that. And it's taken me, a lot of experience and a lot of patience and a lot of really great teachers. I have a few good mentors that are just really, really phenomenal at what they do. And I feel blessed in that regard.
How did you find your community and build up this network, being really close to family before, and now you're creating your own tribe, your own team to, build out this process? How did you start there?
We don't really necessarily, we have friends, we haven't really found our tribe. I think my wife and I sort of want to create our own tribe. I have big dreams. I'm not afraid to admit that. And I think what we'd like to see someday is to set up a nonprofit in both my brothers' names, where we can create a place for people with less means, that are that don't have the opportunity like a lot of us do to get to these medicines. And through that, I kind of want to build this tribe. You know what I mean? And give a place for people to get to the medicine and all this other stuff. And I have small children, and I have to raise them first, but I assume, intuitively, that someday I will be a holder of one of the medicines, you know what I mean? And I love them all, so I don't really know which it is. And I think that, some of my problem has been wanting to do this all at once, and just being here and talking about this all day. Like, I can see what my work is these next 4 or 5, 10 years or whatever. But when I'm older, I would really like to provide what some of the people that have provided for me to other people. So I think it's got to be rewarding to be on that side of it. It has to be.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm going to just cut to break and we'll let our sponsors share the work that they're doing in the world right now. And then we'll come back and we'll dive more into, these dreams that you have and also some other things that may be able to help others get to this place and start imagining again, start dreaming again.
Yeah.
So thank you, Ryan.
You. I'll see you in a minute. Yeah.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to save the VCBC at gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Growing your own cannabis is easier than you think. Whether you're growing for recreational or medical purposes, BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. From the standard 4-plant recreational systems to the latest cutting-edge hydroponic equipment, BMA can customize your package and do it at discount prices. Visit BMA Hydroponics at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville and ask us for a free estimate. Or call 613-967-9888 and we will give you an estimate over the phone.
The only way to go.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
All right. Welcome back, Ryan. Welcome back, everyone. We just have a few minutes left here, and I wanted to start just by coming back to the parenthood thing because, I think you made a great point, and I don't even know if you meant to make it, but it's a decision that you made for yourself that I caught in your wording, which was that right now your responsibility is just raising those kids and everything else can come after that when you get older. And just these phrases and words, I just find it so insightful, and also they're powerful decisions to be making. It's showing your focus and your concentration, but also your commitment to just go one thing at a time, one step at a time, one progress, one accomplishment, one celebration at a time. Even if your dad's not there to celebrate with you, you're still doing it. And that's showing so much commitment. And your dreams for the future, those are commitments too, even though it's not right now. And I wanted to bring light to that as well, because I think so many people get really passionate about stuff, me included, where it's I just want to do everything. I feel the call to do this and I have to do it now along with everything else. And it's too much. It almost taps into that that drifter mindset, or even into clutter where you can't even see clearly that what you're going to do, let alone bring anything to completion or give it your full energy. You know, you can't ride two horses with one ass per se.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you'd like to share before you go?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up about the children thing, because I'll tell you that it's very easy for me to forget that, you know, and I think that, you know, being in this sort of environment and speaking about what we're talking about what we're talking about, it's really easy for me to be Ryan and be me and be able to think clearly, you know, and this is just another sign for me that this is what I do. Let's talk about plant medicine and try to spread the awareness and write stories about it, because I just feel like it's really easy to start thinking about these other things. And that's a lot of my trouble, is just wanting to get everything done at once. You know what I mean? But I've allowed myself this week to put Christmas first and my children first. And I think that's probably important to do that all the time. But it's, you know, I don't want to come across as saying this is easy, because it's not. It's I have to remind myself every day why I'm doing this. And it always comes back to the same thing. Like, I'm doing this, you know, patiently, because I have children to raise, and my goal is to get them so they can be independent and feel safe with themselves, and to all these things that I wasn't taught, you know what I mean? And I think that when I'm just being in journey space, it's really easy for me to see that a lot of the troubles that I've had in my generational trauma are just simple things that we're not taught as children. Simple things that were just overlooked. And it's stupid, like setting the table. Like, you don't do that in one generation, you're never going to do it. And it's like, and it's over and over and over again. I know that was a bad example, but that's what I've sort of learned. It's just like, I go to these places and I'm like, this stuff is so simple, you know, and it's all about teaching our kids. So that's what I try to do more than anything. And I think that, you know, my wife's doing an incredible job. She homeschools children, and she has that ability. That would be really hard for me to do, because you know, I'm the dad, and I do a lot of the other dad things or whatever. But I'm really proud of my wife Stephanie for being able to show up for them that way, and we really believe in what we're doing. And Stephanie was actually really nervous to ask me about homeschooling the kids, and like, when she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so scared," and I'm like, "What? I'm so up for this." And like, the pandemic, you know, gave us that freedom to explore that. You know, Stephanie always wanted to do that. And I guess that's what living in flow looks like. You just go with the flow with the universe, and what it presents to you, you just go with it. And that's why I know that these things that I dream about are going to happen, because I believe them. And I know that my life, you know, when I go in these journey spaces, I pretty much know I'm right where I am and right where I'm supposed to be. And I always have been, you know, and that's just that feeling of presence is so important. And so, yeah, you just tackle one thing at a time. And I know that at the end of my life, you know, I have a lot of things that I want to do and give back to the people that have helped me. And, you know, I talked about this in something I wrote on Facebook last week about just the importance of the next generation, because, you know, the people that I follow, the people that I respect, and the people I admire are pretty much saying that this next generation is up for them to really get this world turned around. So I need to do my part. You know, we all need to do our part to teach these kids to be there for themselves and to shine that vibrant light, you know, and to be able to teach their children, so we can keep this thing going, so we can save our beautiful planet, and we can stop living in a world full of control and fear and judgment and all these things that are crippling all of us, you know what I mean, in a world full of suffering, and just really open our hearts to love. So that's why I'm inspired every single day. And I thank my children, and I thank my wife for giving me that inspiration. I will wholeheartedly admit it's really easy to forget sometimes. You know, you get in the madness of Christmas, stress, work, everyday life. It's easy to be like, oh my God, it's not fair. Why am I stay-at-home dad? Why can't I just have a job like everybody? You know, and you forget, you know, and that's why I'm not going to say escape, but having these medicines and cannabis is such a really good reminder. You know what I mean? It can really just get me to that place of presence and remember what it is I'm doing, and just to be patient in the process. And to be honest with you, the first thing that ayahuasca taught me was patience. And I knew that was patience, not for so many different things, but I knew it's just like, hey, Ryan, like, you're going to get it figured out, buddy, but you got to have patience. You got a lot of shit you got to overcome. Be patient. And it's the most valuable lesson I've ever learned. And the funny thing is, it's like the ayahuasca itself didn't come on for a very long time. I had to be patient. And then all of a sudden it was just like, boom! And I was like, okay. So once I understood, like, the patience part of it, then ayahuasca showed up for me. You know what I mean? And that will always be the first thing that these medicines have ever taught me. And then it's one of the most important things I've ever learned. And that patience is such a key to being a good father. I like to call myself a good father because I know I am. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to actually link Stephanie's podcast with us in the comments below too, because we did have her on. And so for anybody who missed it, you'll have a second chance to go back and meet her as well. I got a question for you, one that I ask all of our guests, and that's, if I was going to hand you a dandelion to make a wish, what would that be? A wish for yourself, or for the world, for your children? What would it be?
In the simplest terms, just world peace. World peace. I think that's an easy one.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you? What would that look like?
A world free of suffering. I read a book called The Mastery of Love by, I can't remember his name. He's the guy that wrote the 4 Agreements.
Greg Chapman.
No, it's Rodriguez.
4 Agreements.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking 5 love languages because you said love.
The Mastery of Love.
The last name is Ruse. R-U-I-Z.
Yes, Ruiz.
I don't know how to.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how to pronounce the first part.
Yeah, I know. I can't remember, but I read that not long after my brother passed away, and it just made me realize, the suffering that I myself was doing, and the suffering that this world is in, and it's just like, the most difficult thing for me. I still keep saying that, but one of the difficult things for me in the plant medicine world is just like, why isn't everybody doing this? Like when I came out of this experience, I was just like, hey, let's go, and everyone's like, what are you? And it's just like, no, dude, like you got to believe me. And that's been frustrating. So it's just, I really want the world to wake up to healing, because people don't, like we talked about in the beginning, they just really misunderstand trauma. And they call it depression, they call it all these anger, they call these things. It's really just symptoms of trauma over and over and over again. And it's like, and when we don't heal this trauma, that's when all these diseases and sicknesses and all this stuff come. And it's really that
addictions, obsessive behaviors and habits. Yeah.
So I just would like to see a world without suffering. That's really the main thing. And if everyone in the world is not suffering, that means I'm not suffering. So it's a beautiful place to live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, because I know you have to go hang out with the kids, Stephanie's going to work. How can everybody reach you if they want to talk to you, one-on-one, or to purchase your book, to support you in any way?
All right. Well, soon I'm going to have my website. It's going to be ryantcgraves.com. Ryan TC, and the TC is for Trevor and Connor, my 2 brothers. And that's going to be a place where you can buy my books. I'm going to blog on. I'm going to probably have an eventual podcast, like this, something like that. I'm going to have videos talking about all the things we talked about here. That should be up in January or February. And I will have a contact on there where people can get in touch with me. I'm on Instagram, Ryan TC Graves. That's my handle. I'm on Facebook, and I have written on Facebook too. I have a lot of random pieces, I call them, on there that they can find. And Miraculous you can buy on Amazon. And the Mushroom Chronicles, I don't know yet. I'm going to try to pitch this to editors and stuff and see what we can what I can get with that. But that will probably be available midsummer, I would imagine. And then my sequel to Miraculous, called The Pinehurst Cure, I'm hoping probably for about a year from right now. So all of this is really solid stuff. It's all about me, and no shame in admitting that. But at the same time, I talk a lot about my trauma, and I really lay the blueprint out to how healing can look like and why it's worth it. And I don't hold anything back in any of the stories. So I'm here. I'm happy to help. I would be honored if anyone felt called to reach out to me. So.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate having you here. It takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable in these ways, to share your story, whether it's, through voice or writing, any of that, and I know that this is going to inspire a lot of others to start doing it. I know when you said as soon as you get out of the medicine, you're like, I need to share this. Why isn't everybody doing it? It's something I get all the time from people. And so what you're giving here is a roadmap of how it is you can do something about it. I almost like to think about it, outside of religion, but it is kind of like writing gospel, it's all just stories to help you connect to yourself, connect with spirituality, connect with others out there that may be experiencing something similar to you. And it's really powerful work, and I really appreciate you for all that you're doing, and Stephanie
Likewise.
too.
Yeah, no, likewise. Thank you very much for having us on here. I feel honored to be here with you, and I'm grateful that there's someone out there like you doing this. You know what I mean? It's beautiful, and you do a great job, and I'm excited to start listening to myself, and start learning more myself and bringing more awareness to this world. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Talk soon.
All right, take care.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. Visit our hydroponics superstore at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville, and we'll show you how to grow your own quality cannabis for pennies per gram. We're open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Thursdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Call 613-967-9888. BMA Hydroponics. It's worth the drive.
The only way to go. When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partners 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at Pace Radio.